Today at the National Press Club, Australian of the Year Taryn Brumfitt, an author and documentary maker dedicated to helping women and children foster positive body image. Taryn Brumfitt with today's National Press Club address.
Good afternoon and welcome to the National Press Club Westpac address. My name is Emma MacDonald and I'm the Associate Editor of Her Canberra and the Canberra Convener of Women in Media. Today's speaker is Australian of the Year Taryn Brumfitt, a woman who has ignited a global movement for us to embrace and appreciate our bodies. Taryn's message of body acceptance and body positivity has been heard around the world, not least the White House a very few short days ago. But she's fended off the jet lag to be at our podium today and we're very grateful. I wish to advise that Taryn's speech does contain some sensitive topic areas and mentions of depression, anxiety, eating disorders, drug use and suicide. If you would like to join the conversation online, please use the handle @PressClubAust and our hashtag is NPC. I'd like you to welcome Taryn.
Thanks, Emma. To begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we meet today, the Ngunnawal peoples, and all people and families who have a traditional connection to the lands of the ACT. I pay my respects to elders past and present. I am very excited to be here today, but also a touch more nervous than usual. I'm no stranger to delivering a keynote. I've delivered hundreds around the world, from Google HQ in Silicon Valley and Sky in Scotland and everywhere in between. But today, my dad, he's watching, he has never missed a press club address and no pressure. So I hope, Dad, that I can meet your KPIs today. It's 10 years ago today, 10 years ago this year, that I shared a before and after image of my body that sent the internet into a spin and lit the spark behind what would become my career and sole focus for the next decade. In that time, it feels like we've made some real progress on body image, but what became exceedingly clear to me at the start of this year was how far we've actually got to go. I was relatively aware of how normal we consider it to be so heavily invested in others' bodies, how freely we feel to voice our own opinions on the appearance of others. But I don't think I was prepared for the lack of awareness or some of the closed-mindedness that this very serious issue would be met with. I recall a comment from a media personality in reaction to my Australian of the Year award, along the lines of being surprised because body image was so 10 years ago. This couldn't be more untrue. Body image issues among young people are the worst they've ever been. Since the start of the pandemic, rates of body image distress and eating disorders in young people have doubled. A 2013 Deloitte economic study found that the total socio-economic cost of eating disorders was $69.7 billion, not to mention the immeasurable personal cost. Aussie kids have never been in more body image distress than they are now. This is a very today issue. One of the things I said about doing this year was taking the incredible research and evidence-based resources that are informed by the latest science and scaling them up to reach 1 million people, with the aim to get in early with the message of acceptance and appreciation of our bodies. I was, and I still am, so buzzed, and I love seeing young people in the room here today, at what the thought of 1 million young Aussie kids who are free from a life of judgment and shame around their bodies and appearance. This one's for you guys. But the fact is that we can preach better body image until we're blue in the face. We can give them all the tools, resources, and frameworks we have, but it will all come unstuck if we allow harmful messages to come at them in the home, with grandparents, on the sports field, at the doctors, in the media. It will all be for nothing. I'm absolutely convinced that if we do not do the work as individuals to change our own internalised beliefs and behaviours about bodies, it will be another decade before we see any meaningful, lastful change. So what I'm going to do here today is challenge you to look inside yourself and start to pick apart some of these deeply ingrained beliefs, to be honest and to be curious. I'm going to shine a spotlight on some of the most harmful myths that we have come to accept, and I'm going to ask you to commit to challenging these, to commit to start unlearning all that you thought you knew about bodies, weight, size, health, and appearance. Because if we cannot identify how we participate in and perpetuate the harmful narratives around bodies, how are we ever going to heal ourselves? And how are we ever going to lead from the front for our young people? It starts with us as individuals. So how did it start for me? What's my story, and how do I find myself standing in front of you today as your 2023 Australian of the Year? There's this great quote by a man called Steve Furtick, and he says, "Don't compare your behind the scenes with everyone else's highlight reel." So it's really important for me to show you all the sides. So my highlight reel reads well. I'm the co-executive director of a health promotion charity, the Embrace Collective. I'm the author of 4 books. I have directed and created 2 feature documentaries, and my message has reached 200 million people around the world, and yes, including the White House last week. But I've also been lost. I've also been on my knees. The wheels have fallen off on several occasions. In my teens, my family was rocked by the suicide of my uncle. I'm still devastated every day to have lost my brother, Jason, when he was 27 years old. And I was absolutely broken a few years ago when my 19-year marriage ended. So I feel like I've had the full human experience, some real highs and lows. But out of all of the life-changing moments, there has been nothing more profound than when I decided to stop hating my body and learn to appreciate it and embrace it instead. Aside from my kids, nothing has given me more joy, more adventures, more fun, and I highly recommend it to others, because here's the thing, I've never met anyone who's learned to embrace their body and regretted the decision to do so. It really should come with a 100% money back guarantee. My personal story, it's a long one, and if you're interested, there's a whole documentary on Netflix called Embrace. So here's the short version of how in one ordinary moment, my daughter changed the course of my life, my career, and the relationship I had with my body. So let's rewind to 2010. I sat on the floor of our messy lounge room, surrounded by 3 kids under the age of 5, and all of the chaos that brings. The toys, piles of unfolded washing, and crusts of toast. I don't know why crusts of toast feature so much, they just do. It's noisy and the Wiggles are singing joyfully, and it's a stark contrast to mine. I'm sitting on the floor, my eyes are so tired from the lack of sleep, and my brain is exploding from the mental load of it all. And all I could do was focus on how much I hated my body. I looked down at my stomach and my breasts and all the things that I didn't recognise anymore, and they had grown and stretched and deflated on repeat 3 times. And like so many women, I was struggling with who I was when I didn't look like or feel like myself anymore. And it was in that moment, on that morning, I booked an appointment to see a cosmetic surgeon to fix what I thought was my broken body. I went to the appointment and I listened to the surgeon as he proceeded to describe how he could put my body back together. But when I went home and saw my sweet baby girl run towards me and give me the most joyous hug that only a toddler can, I had this thought: how am I going to teach my daughter to embrace her body if I change mine? So I cancelled the scheduled surgery. A really small but important caveat to make here is that I hold no judgment for people who have had cosmetic surgery or get Botox or engage with the myriad of things that we can do to change and alter our bodies. This is simply my experience and my story. Your body, your rules, my body, my rules. So I made the decision for Michaela to not go ahead with the surgery, but I was still plagued with the thought, what does it feel like to have the perfect body? So as you do, I got into bodybuilding and I built the perfect body and I punished myself physically. I spent hours at the gym and restricted my calories, but soon I realised that I couldn't sustain the regime for the rest of my life, nor was I happier in my perfect body. I came to realise that my body is not an ornament, it is the vehicle to my dreams. I realised that I didn't want to move my body to punish it, I wanted to move it for the pleasure of being alive. I learnt that I wanted to nourish my body with foods that fueled me and gave me lots of energy, that I didn't want to climb mountains and check the amount of calories I'd lost on my watch. I wanted to climb mountains and look at the view. It had felt like I'd won the golden ticket and my whole perspective had changed. As I reflected on all the before and after photos that I've seen over the years, where a woman or a man is in a before photo in a larger body, sometimes they're holding a newspaper to prove the date, and the after they're in a smaller body and they're miraculously happier. And I called BS on this. I swapped my photos around and I posted a non-traditional before and after photo. Before in my perfect body and after in my body as it is now. It was astonishing at the time that a woman could love her bigger body after, and it sent the internet into a spin, going viral overnight. It made headline news in most countries around the world, and it truly was a media frenzy. But what people didn't see was me behind closed doors trying to keep up with the 7,000 emails and messages that I had received from people all over the world, describing their very personal stories about how much they hated their bodies. 7,000 heartbreaking stories. It was in that moment that I fully understood the scale of this issue. In Australia, body image is a huge problem for young people and adults alike. Here's what we know. 91% of women want a different body from the one they have. For our youth, we are experiencing a paediatric health emergency. 77% of Australian adolescents experience body image distress, which is actually higher than the global average. Rates of suicide, depression, anxiety, eating disorders, and steroid use related to body dissatisfaction are soaring. And we know that young people with poor body image are 24 times more likely to develop depression and anxiety. 1 in 10 adolescent boys and 1 in 3 girls meet the criteria for eating disorders. And the issues are presenting at younger and younger ages. We now have the data that shows that 37% of 3-year-olds want a different body to the one they have. And there is an elevated risk for body image concerns among trans, non-binary, gender diverse and sexual minority young people. Recent research has confirmed that these issues exist across all cultural backgrounds and all levels of advantage and disadvantage and at all ages. As a mum to 4 kids, my heart breaks reflecting on the amount of conversations that I've had with young people and their stories of deep dissatisfaction. Whether it be young girls talking about their desire to have preventative Botox, or young boys with a fixated mindset that being bigger is better. It is important to note that body image isn't just about women and their weight, it affects everyone. It's about how everybody feels about their body, their size, their shape, skin colour and conditions, hair, height, disability, identity. I've had many conversations with men about the body image distress that they go through and experience, all subject to a different set of standards, but equally as damaging. Now finally, the costs. People are shocked to learn that there's a price tag that comes with hating our bodies. As I mentioned earlier, 2012 data tells us that the full socio-economic cost of eating disorders in Australia each year is $69.7 billion, with health expenditure costs adding another $99.9 million annually. Eating disorders aside, what about the personal cost of hating your body? We asked everyday Australians that exact question, and these were some of their answers. I avoided photos, and now I don't have any memories with my family and friends. 45 years of not wearing what I wanted to wear. Missing out on swimming and calling off on hot days because I didn't want to wear the shorts or the bathers. I wasted 15 years of my life dieting. I didn't go for my dream job because I didn't think I looked the part. Does it sound familiar? Why do we live like this? And why do we accept this as normal? I think every reasonable person in our country, and all of you here, and everybody watching, we must come to terms with the fact that body image and the way we feel about our appearance is a little bit more than just #LoveYourBody. So how are we going to go about addressing this almighty issue? Well, let's start by unpacking the 4 biggest, most harmful, most persistent myths and deeply ingrained beliefs that we hold about bodies collectively. Let's do the work on ourselves as adults so we can help our kids. Myth number 1, you can judge a person's health by their appearance. This is absolutely, categorically untrue. Just as you cannot gauge a person's mental health by their appearance, you cannot gauge a person's physical health by their appearance. And while it's not our place to judge the health of others, to an extent, it's not our fault that we have collectively come to associate the ways bodies look with a particular level of health. We've been bombarded with messages from a very young age telling us what healthy looks like. We tie virtue and success to beauty and thinness, and fat is denigrated at every turn. I'm sure that you've heard these narratives before. Conventionally thin, beautiful women always get the guy, as if that's the most important thing, that we get the guy. While the women in larger bodies get to be funny. The muscly hero with the chiselled jawline saves the day every time, while his smaller, thinner, paler counterpart taps away on a computer in the lab. Sure, I've oversimplified this here, but without a doubt, the stereotypes and tropes are everywhere. And because of this, we have come to believe that we can assess a person's inner health by their outer appearance. I want to share a rather personal and painful example of how I know this to be true. My brother was charismatic and charming and incredibly funny. He had the potential to do so much, and he always seemed to be in the right place at the right time. So when he was living in Queensland, he was randomly approached by one of the team from the movie The Thin Red Line, and they asked him to be Sean Penn's movie double, which of course he jumped at the chance. And I don't want to make it about appearance, but the girls did think Jason was a bit of a good looker. Now, if I put Jason here and then a man in a larger body next to him and asked 100 people, who do you think's healthier out of these 2 men? They all would have said Jason was healthier. And yet Jason was a heroin addict. He died from his addiction on a park bench in Sydney across from Central Station. You just do not know what's going on in someone's life, and you most definitely can't judge someone's health by their appearance. Myth number 2, other people's bodies are your business. Nope, they are definitely not. In the heyday of magazines, you couldn't walk past a newsstand without publications screaming headlines like "Best and Worst Beach Bodies" or "Stars Without Makeup, you won't believe what they really look like." Why was it any of our business what someone looked like mid-snooze at the beach or while they were shopping in their trackies at Woolies on Sunday morning. The problem here is it doesn't just happen on the newsstand. It happens in our own lives too. So many people have told me that they remember the exact moment in their teens when a relative teased them about their puppy fat during Christmas dinner, or when a colleague in the tea room said and looked at their lunch and said, "Don't eat too much of that, it's got a lot of sugar in it." From the top down, we have been taught that other people's bodies and what they do with them belong to the public domain. And we have normalised how deeply invested we are in other people's bodies to the point that we don't stop to think twice about how inappropriate it is to comment so freely on their weight and their size and their shape, appearance, health choices, health habits. Can we just stop? As a society, if we genuinely want people to be healthier, a great place to start is to commit to not commenting on their appearance or weight or making assumptions about anyone's health. If we normalise this type of judgment, our young ones will go on to think that their bodies should be subject to public scrutiny. It's harmful, unhelpful, and quite simply, none of our business. Myth number 3, we have to punish, weigh and shame our bodies to achieve good health. Remember The Biggest Loser? Or Life Be In It? Norm on the Couch? Special K Pinch an Inch? Or the toxic fat commercial? It wasn't that long ago that we accepted these as normal. We never even questioned them. The problem? They're harmful and ineffective. We now have evidence that confirms that these type of campaigns lead to an increase in disordered eating. Telling people that they are overweight and making them feel bad is not helpful, and guess what? It leads to weight gain. So what's the goal here? Is it actually better health? Is it better health? I'm not sure. Because the science now shows that weighing people and labelling them in overweight and obese weight categories and making them feel shame about their weight is problematic, but we're still doing it. In a study in the US, adolescents who did not know that they were in a higher weight category were more likely to eat fruit and vegetables and move their bodies and be on a sports team and get 8 hours of sleep a night than those who knew that they were overweight or obese. While talking about the United States, almost 10 years ago, 24 states in the US had policies to weigh kids in school, and many sent home a body mass index, otherwise known as a BMI report card, to parents. Economic analysis revealed that $210 million was spent on these screening processes and that it did not change anything. It didn't reduce weight and it didn't help people engage in better health behaviours. And in fact, this process has caused harm and it's led to disordered eating, depression and psychological distress. So what does this tell us? That creating shame around weight and fat and using indicators like BMI to classify people by their weight as a way to help them change isn't working. The science also tells us these facts: that people with a higher appreciation of their bodies are more likely to eat fruit and vegetables, to move their body and wear sunscreen. They are less likely to smoke, drink, take illicit drugs and vape. Making people feel good about their bodies helps them to engage in more positive behaviours, to be physically active, to look after their bodies. You don't need to feel bad about yourself to be healthy. You actually need to stop feeling bad about yourself to be healthy. Myth number 4, it's a fun one, social media. Social media is to blame for the epidemic of body image distress. Look, social media is part of the problem, but it's not the whole problem. Many of us had body image issues long before Zuckerberg and influencer culture were even a thing, let alone smartphones. Social media is here to stay and we need to use it for good. The science is showing that body neutral content and body positive content on social media is helpful. It's the over-altered images, weight loss content, and appearance commentary that is most harmful. Social media feeds full of positive imagery and content aren't just some fictional utopia. There are already companies showing us what's possible. Earlier this year, I had a meeting with the managing director of Pinterest, and she explained to me how Pinterest had altered their algorithm. So when someone searched for wedding dresses or date night outfits, they were served images of a range of different bodies and shapes and sizes. So when people are quick to throw up their hands and say, it's the algorithm, sorry, it doesn't have to be. They can do better, and we can demand better. So let's encourage a more empowered approach to social media for us and our kids. Just like in real life, let's be discerning about who you let in the door and use your power to support things that help us feel good and unfollow things that don't. And as Jamila Jamil says in the Embrace Kids documentary, block, mute, delete, repeat. So beyond this, what can we do? Well, we need to switch up the message to our kids. We need to work on the systemic changes, making sure that the messages in the environments around them support instead of work against them. Knowing we needed a whole new approach, my colleague and global body image research expert, Dr. Zali Jaeger, and I came together to lead the Embrace Collective. We're a team of academics, experts and creatives networked in globally with other expert teams and informed by a diverse lived experience advisory network, all working to tackle the body image health crisis. To give some context to where we're going, I want to take you back to a time in 2016. It was in this year that I released my first documentary, Embrace, which was seen by millions of people in 190 countries. And as I travelled around the world, people who saw the film would come up to me and say, "This film saved my life." It was around this time that Dr. Zali Jaeger, then Associate Professor from Victoria Uni and Associate Professor Ivanka Pritchard at Flinders University, approached me to do a global study on the film. Anecdotally, I knew that the film was doing good things, but this research published in BMC Women's Health in 2020 confirmed that women who had seen Embrace had much higher levels of body appreciation than those who hadn't seen the film. But actually, the number one thing that people said after they watched the film was, "I wish I had seen this when I was younger." So I knew that we needed to make a film for kids. So we did, Embrace Kids. We had an executive producer team of legends like Celeste Barber, Teresa Palmer, and my dear friend Natasha Stott-Despoja. We cast 18 kids and interviewed people like Chloe Hayden and Amy Shepherd, Jamila Jamil, and just for fun and to test my director nerves, we cast dogs. Why dogs? Well, I asked myself that too a few times. Well, to make the film age appropriate. To make the film age appropriate, we couldn't show too many bodies in the film. But naturally, because when we see a body, we compare ourselves to it. But we could talk about and see dogs' bodies. And this allowed us to highlight the narrative that we never ask dogs to be anything other than what they are. We don't ask the sausage dog to round up the sheep on the farm. Or we don't expect the Chihuahua to be the mountain rescue dog. We accept dogs for who they are. We appreciate that their bodies are good at doing different things. If only we could do that for one another. I actually think, never heard these words at the press club, I think we can learn a lot from dogs. Please don't make that a headline tomorrow. The Embrace Kids film is a celebration of diversity, and it's built on the foundation of the most important human quality, kindness. In the film, we unpack big subjects like social media, representation, disability, diversity, and bullying. We wanted the film to be a conversation starter, and that's exactly what it's been for many families across the country. A discussion entry point to some of our kids' biggest concerns, and an invitation to be more empathetic in the face of difference. When I asked one of my teenage kids what he thought of the film, his response was, "It was better than I thought it was going to be." It's pretty much a 5-star review right there. But most importantly, however, is the data from the first round of evaluation of this film. It is showing that it's being effective in improving body appreciation, appreciation of body functionality, and self-compassion. So what's the rest of our plans to lead the way in tackling this enormous global health challenge? Well, it's bold and it's ambitious, but it's backed by science and it's driven by a team of globally leading experts, and it starts right here in Australia. Earlier this year, when I sat down with the Prime Minister, the Health Minister, the Leader of the Opposition, Independents, Liberals, you name it, every single politician we spoke to agreed that body image and eating disorders are a big problem. Advocacy groups in both the body image and eating disorder space have spent 10 years trying to convince people of the enormity and complexity of this issue. So it was very encouraging to have this kind of universal support and understanding from everyone we met with. A friend of mine joked that to have bilateral support on any issue in Australia is the impossible challenge, but clearly it cuts through. Australia has a long history of highly effective public health campaigns. Smoking, sun safety, seatbelts. We now have the opportunity to make deep, lasting change on this issue too. We set our mission to reach 1 million Aussie children with the Embrace message and resources this year as the springboard to a new generation of young people who feel empowered in their bodies. We just reached the halfway point, reaching 1 in 8 kids in Australia, and we are well on our way to reaching our initial target of 1 in 4, then 1 in 2, and our ultimate goal of reaching every single child in Australia. With a fresh approach to educating young people, we're melding art with science to deliver creative solutions that are relevant, relatable, and don't get lost in the noise. With programs and resources for school, home, sport, and community settings, we're empowering and educating the caregivers, leaders, and professionals who support young people in all of the settings where they live, learn, and play. We're working with young people, involving them in the process, using new evidence-informed approaches like Activate, where we let youth leaders drive the agenda and take ownership of getting that message back to their communities. Each program is evidence-led and expert-informed to ensure it's context and age-appropriate and focused on what actually works. These programs, with the support of the $6.2 million federal funding, will start to roll out this Friday, with another launch in December and more to follow next year. One of the most things I'm excited about is the prospect of taking this to our youngest Aussies. So unlike us, they don't have to go through the process of unlearning, because prevention is everything. A few years ago, I wrote a song called Embrace Your Body with children's entertainment group, Pevin and Sarah. And I wrote down some lyrics about how magical our bodies are, and I gave it to them. And I said, make a song from this and make sure it's got plenty of 80s vibes, because that is good for everyone's soul. Well, they delivered, because the song went #1 on iTunes and knocked Baby Shark off the #1 spot. And it was the best part of my year, was visiting the reception kinder kids at primary schools and watching kids sing and dance their hearts out to the Embrace Your Body song. And after the dance-off, when I asked the little ones to describe their body, they told me things like, my body is strong, energetic, I can kick a footy, my heart is big, I'm fast, my brain is clever. They got it. They so clearly got it. For them, embracing comes as naturally as breathing. It filled me with so much hope to think that if we get in early, we can prevent a lifetime of unnecessary body image issues. Let's spare our youngest kids this heartache. Let's create a whole generation of kids who don't know what it's like to be teased about their acne or their ears or their size or their shape, to feel like they don't fit in because they are bigger or smaller with too much of this or too little of that. Let's make sure that from a decade from now, it's not 37% of 3-year-olds who want a different body, that it's 0%, because they deserve so much better. So there's a lot in motion. We have the research, the tools, the programs and resources in place. I'm here committed to leading the change with my colleagues at the Embrace Collective until we reach our goals. And I don't care if I'm 99 and filming Embrace Geriatric. I am here for the long haul. But what happens if, as adults and parents and teachers and caregivers and coaches and journalists and marketers and leaders and humans, if we don't stop to look inside ourselves and make the fundamental changes to the way we think and act? So I want to get really practical with you here, because we all have a role to play, and it's crucial. So this is my plea to the nation. If you're a parent, role model or caregiver to a young person, the most powerful thing that you can do is to stop saying anything negative about your body or appearance or anyone else's in front of your kids. If you're a teacher, after parents and caregivers, school-age kids spend the most time with educators, so your role is pivotal. Much of the legwork is done. We have the resources and we know what works, and it's available freely to you. So please take advantage of this. If you're a sports coach or a dance teacher, we must start to focus on the fun and the functionality of our kids' bodies, and do not talk about what their bodies look like. Let's talk about all the things our bodies can do. Influencers, media personalities, and talent. Educate yourselves on how you might be contributing. Put a photoshopping policy in place that your images can't be airbrushed or altered. Let your audiences see the real you. I put one in place 7 years ago, and it's so easy, and no one has ever given me a hard time for having that policy. Simple. Now to journalists and media folks. I'm running out of time, so you've only got a little bit here, but I have a really important ask for you. Can we show images of people that are as diverse in appearance as we see when we walk down the street? Can we please stop the free publicity of weight loss drugs by naming them constantly? And let's stop talking about weight and obesity and start talking about health, please. Finally, and most importantly to each of us as human beings with bodies, it is not your life's purpose to be at war with your body. Remind yourself daily that you get 28,000 days on the planet if you're really lucky. And I don't know about you, but it only felt like yesterday that I was a teenager and I had P plates on my car and I was putting the backpack on to go travelling across the world. And then one click of a finger, I'm in a 45-year-old body. I see blue sky and I think, it's a good day for washing. And the teenager's like, who are you? And you know what's going to happen? Click again, I'm going to be 65 and then I'm going to be 95 and you're all coming with me. Life is short, life is fleeting. So please don't waste it being at war with your body. And please don't set the young ones up in your life for a lifetime of the same. We weren't born into the world hating our bodies. It's something that we've been taught. For everyone's sake, it's time to unlearn. Thank you. Hang on, let me check in with Dad. Was that all right, Dad?
Yeah, I'm sure your dad would have absolutely loved that. Thank you so much, Taryn. I'm going to ask the very first question before we turn over to the media. You talk in Embrace, you talk to a number of experts and eating disorder experts and medical experts, but there was a phrase that really stood out to me, and that was that dieting is soul draining. Soul draining. I just want to ask, do you think you could have survived this year in the frenetic pace and done everything that you've done if you had been on that restrictive diet that you went on before you were a bodybuilder? Would you have had the energy and the stamina?
Definitely not. It's a great question. The first thing I think of whenever I hear the word diet, I think it's a 4-letter word and the first 3 letters spell die. If that's not a sign, then I don't know what is. But I tell you, I was only thinking just yesterday, because I did get off a plane a couple of days ago. I wish it was
hours ago.
Yeah, that's right, a few hours ago. And I was actually thinking about stamina, and I was thinking about this year has required an enormous amount of stamina, more than I've ever had in my whole entire life. It's been a big challenging year. But what has given me the stamina to do the thing is self-compassion, self-love, self-care, and it's a new kind of leadership, I believe, that we don't need to lean into the masculine and the hard and the forced and the push. We can actually be really kind and gentle with ourselves and grounding with ourselves. Absolutely, if I was still dieting, I would have been so preoccupied with what I was eating and when I was going to go to the gym and how I was going to train my body, that I couldn't show up in the world like I do, which is, it's whole. I think when I was dieting and when I was obsessed with how my body looked, I completely forgot about how my body felt. And in the Embrace Kids film, Celeste Barbers does such an extraordinary job of just simplifying it for us. When she says, yeah, sure, I spend some time thinking about how I look, but more of my time is spent on how I feel. And I think if we simplify this, I think if we all get those ratios right and we just balance it out a little bit more, put the focus on how we feel, the things that we're doing and contributing to the world, how we're enjoying our bodies, it's a much better way. The Embrace way, I told you, it also comes with a 100% money back guarantee. Did I mention that? It just makes a lot of sense. We were not meant to hate our bodies. And I'm reminded of that when I get to hang out with, the young kids. They see a sprinkler and they're nudie running through the sprinkler. They hear music and they're dancing. And that is how we all arrived in this world. Before the rules got in the way, before we took in the messaging and the marketing that came at us and said, be different, don't feel good about your body. I've had so many people say to me, I really wanted to do the thing, but I thought, I'm too old. It's like, who's making up these rules? And who's sidelining us in our own lives? And I think if we can take back the power ourselves, that we make up the rules, that we decide what we do in our bodies, with our bodies, it's a really cool space to live life from.
All right, next question is Julie Hare from the Australian Financial Review.
Thank you very much for your speech today. It was certainly thought-provoking and very enjoyable. I have a question around... So I'll just come back to a quote you said, let's stop talking about weight and let's talk about health instead. I'm just wondering where for you the line in the sand is between health and obesity, between body positivity and obesity. A third of all Australians are now obese, while in America, in the US, this is the first generation of people who will die younger than their parents because of obesity. Fundamentally because of obesity. So where is the line in that sand? And is telling obese people that it's good just to feel positive about yourselves without thinking about your broader health context a necessarily positive message? And just on that, because I am a journalist, you said journalists keep talking about certain weight loss drugs and naming them. I am very interested in your views about weight loss drugs, including Ozempic. I named it. There's a revolution going on in terms of the number of people accessing it. Potentially, I've had other people in the wellbeing space tell me it could be revolutionary in terms of the whole obesity epidemic, and how your feelings towards those sorts of drugs. Oh, and also Kayla Itzane said it was a fitness. She just described Ozempic as an eating disorder. Sorry, that was very...
That's like a diatribe of questions.
Yeah, we'll take the first.
Let me just,
right. The first one.
First, I'm not going to talk about the weight loss drug. There's enough of it out there, and it's doing us such a great disservice to talk about it. So what I want everyone to know is that people who appreciate and feel good about their bodies are more likely to move their bodies. They're more likely to eat fruit and vegetables. They're more likely to get cervical screening, they're more likely to put on sunscreen, they're less likely to drink, smoke, take illicit drugs, vape and do all the things. The list of reasons why we would want to get everyone in this country to embrace their bodies and feel good about their bodies is really long. The list of making people feel shame or talking about the obesity epidemic, it has got us nowhere. It makes people feel bad in their bodies. When people feel bad in their bodies, they don't make great choices about their bodies. So we've got enough history to say, can we stop making people feel shame about their bodies? Can we make people feel good in their bodies? Because they're going to make better choices.
Okay, thank you.
Next question is Claudia Long from the ABC.
Hello, thank you for your address. Just following up on some of the issues you've discussed there and also in your speech about how making people feel terrible about their bodies is actually counterproductive. Who knew? But, you know, for a lot of us in bigger bodies, the second you go to the doctor, whether it's for conjunctivitis or mental health, the first thing that gets mentioned often is your weight and the BMI. And I guess, do you have a message for healthcare professionals about when they have, you know, bigger folks coming into the GP surgery or all sorts of stuff like that, about maybe how they can manage that? And is that something that you'd like to talk to the health minister about as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's a conversation that we want to have with everybody because, you know, as I said at the beginning of this speech, it's a very new concept for people to get their heads around after some very powerful campaigns that we've had over the last 2 to 3 decades. So I think when there's any change or anything that disrupts our own pattern of beliefs, we're challenged by it. We want to push back against it. And what I would encourage everyone to do, hopefully everyone in this room and everyone watching, yes, the health minister and everybody, GPs, consider an alternative. Maybe we need to rely on a little bit of common sense, and we certainly need to rely on the science. Making people feel bad about their bodies doesn't make people want to look after their bodies. So just getting people on the scales as the first port of call when you go to the GP is unhelpful. I'm not saying, I'm actually married to a nurse, so I'm actually thinking about you, Tim, when I answer this, but there are settings where you absolutely need to put someone on the scales. So it's not a hard or fast or yes or no or a black and white, but what I'm asking is that we look at the alternatives and that we let the science do the leading and not our feelings or our bias or our judgment. Thank you.
Next question is Kat Wong from AAP.
Thank you for your speech today. So I wanted to ask, the body image movement has its origin in Black, queer, feminist and anti-capitalist activism. But obviously in recent years, there has been an accusation that white women have been gentrifying the movement. It's no secret that diverse LGBTQI and those with disabilities don't always see themselves in the movement that is largely represented by middle-class white women. If we look around the room, we can see that kind of reflected today. So what do you think of these criticisms? And do you think the body image movement that you're leading is doing enough to address the concerns of diverse Australians when your health advisory board is made up of white and white passing members?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I think it's good to challenge people with criticism because it makes people be better about their choices. What we do at the Embrace Collective, it's really important that we have a lived experience advisory board and people that we talk to within the communities, within marginalised groups, minority groups, to help us develop the resources that is relatable and understood and accepted and embraced by everyone. So it's certainly front of mind. You know, it's not the first time being, you know, a white, blonde woman. I've heard this many times. But I guess what I would ask people to be conscious of is look at the work that we do. This is a decade of work for myself, Dr. Zali Jaeger, the co-executive director. She spent 25 years in research. We need more voices and more people at the table, and it's about passing the mic and it's about inviting people in and sharing and not always being the lead. It's something that we are acutely mindful of, and there's always room for growth and to do better.
Thank you.
Next question is Amanda Whitley from Women in Media.
Hi, Taryn. We hear a lot about social media as being this very dangerous implement because, you know, obviously we see the perfection. As a mum of 2 teens, though, I see that it also gives them a window into a whole lot of, you know, of diverse viewpoints and people and ideas of beauty. Do you think that we'll be able to harness that as a tool to contribute in a positive way to this conversation as the generations come through?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's why we don't want to demonise social media, because social media is here to stay. From my experience working with kids, and I have 3 out of my 4 kids are teenagers, so I know this world well, what we need to do is empower them to understand that social media, and for all of us as adults, it's not something that's happening to us. It's something that we engage with. And I almost think that we've forgotten that we are in the driver's seat. We can allow people in or not allow people in. And as I said in the speech, Jamila Jamil, the kids love these 4 words. I mean, she's an incredible activist, but the kids are really run with it. Block, mute, delete, repeat. We wouldn't let someone nasty in our circle of friends say mean things about us, but we can do that online. I will add to the social media and online conversation is that if we are looking at landscapes, or we're looking at cat videos, or we're looking at other things, anything other than bodies, it's not harmful to us. When we look at bodies on social media, on Instagram specifically, for 7 to 9 minutes, it can have a damaging impact on how we feel about our own bodies. So I'm not, again, it's not a headline, Emma, or anyone here for tomorrow, like put cat videos in your newsfeed.
Be good though.
But, well, you know, it is. But I think we just need to take back a little bit of the control about what we see and always challenge, I guess, that social media feed. Is who I'm letting in my life making me feel good and want to be a better person and want to contribute to the world, or are they making me feel bad? Am I comparing my body to theirs? The Steve Furtick quote, don't compare your behind the scenes with everyone else's highlight reel. We do so much of that on social media, but what if we could show up in our most vulnerable ways on social media and not just show the fancy bits and the highlights? I hope that helps. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question is Claudine Ryan from the ABC.
Hi, thanks for that address. It was amazing. As someone who, like probably many people in the room, has lost decades of my life thinking about my body. Claudia spoke about the systemic issues, and that's in the health system, and that's a very hard thing to shift. I wonder if you've got any thoughts about how, when we walk into a GP office or hospital setting, and you're confronted with those questions, how do we respond, you know, for ourselves, or if we've got kids or siblings or friends, like how do we start shifting those conversations?
Yeah, I think they're really difficult conversations to have in those particular moments. I actually think we need to set up the foundation, so in the future, there is no problems walking in and having a very frank conversation, that you don't have to be, you know, put straight on the scales, or unhelpful language around our bodies is used in front of you. So I'm hoping, as Australian of the Year, reaching 1 million children, I suspect that the kids are the ones who are going to be giving us a whole lot of hope. I mean, I've certainly learnt a lot from kids this year, but I think it's important for everyone to play their role, whether you're a teacher, whether you're in the media, whether you're an influencer, that there's a new narrative. And maybe we could lovingly catch one another when we say things that are a little bit unhelpful, or are perhaps stigmatising, or we're criticising, or we're commenting on someone's appearance. That will eventually become the new norm, and that is the hope. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question is Ginger Gorman from Broad Agenda.
Thank you, Taryn, for the work you're doing, and especially for our kids. As the mum of 2 kids, I just really appreciate what you're doing so much. Women often get judged on how they look, not their expertise, and we see this all the time in the media, but in public discourse, and I would argue it gets worse as we age. How do we change it?
I think the quickest way that we can change it is if we stop sidelining ourselves with the comments that we use about our bodies in front of others. I think we almost give permission, and I want to be really careful. I don't want, you know, women to feel worse about the things they've said, but we know what we know, and hopefully beyond this talk today, we don't devalue ourselves by talking negatively about our bodies. So I think that's the first thing we can do. And I think we can also call out poor behaviour. We don't have to put up with it. And again, as long as we're all playing our role and playing our part and talking less about appearances and focusing more on what people do and the contributions that they make to the world, it's going to make it all a lot better. Thanks, Ginger.
Next question is Robin Smith from Pink Hope.
There's so many of you, just keep coming.
Nearly done, nearly done.
No, sorry, welcome.
Thank you for your address this morning. I'm Robin. I'm the Programs and Advocacy Manager from Pink Hope. We're an organisation that support people with hereditary cancer risk. So, like myself, I've got a BRCA mutation. In our community, to manage our risk, many of us are faced with the decision to remove our breasts and our ovaries by the ripe old age of 40. And as you can imagine, that can have huge impacts on our body and our identity. So these choices are really hard, and they're often influenced by biased information and societal norms. So my question for you is, what's your advice on how we can change perceptions around body image and stop unconscious biases around the decisions women like me have to make when we're trying to reduce our risk of cancer?
Yeah, thanks for your question. I don't know if this is uncouth, but I'm going to ask you a question. Have you seen the Embrace documentary?
Absolutely.
Well done. Well, I will answer your question. No, just joking. Do you remember at the end of that film where there was a woman standing on the beach with one breast and she yelled out because she saw another woman on the beach with one breast? And I've just got goosebumps even talking about it. You too? Yeah. It's really special, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really special to see yourself and to see the level of comfort that these two women had in their experiences and their stories and in their bodies. And it was a beautiful moment. A woman with one breast or another one with one breast, and she was like, hey, you're like me, or you've only got one boob. That's how it was so Australian, the way she said it too. I think what's really important on this particular subject is that we hold no judgment for anyone who makes the decision to have surgery or not have surgery. It's all up to us to make those choices. But I love the opportunity that we have for many more women to make informed decisions about if they choose to have surgery, if they don't have surgery. And I think it's conversations, and I think the work that you do, and well done for the work that you do, is life-changing for many people, just to know that it's okay. So celebrating diversity, all the shapes and sizes and the ways that we arrive in the world and that we become in the world, like it's all beautiful. And we're all so incredibly unique, and we don't have to be one particular way. Thanks for your work.
Thank you.
Next question is Lucy Bladen from the Canberra Times. Thanks, Lucy.
Thank you for your address. Last week we heard allegations that a hotties list had been passed around a federal department from graduates there. It's led to questions about what's feeding these people when they're at universities and schools. What can we do better for people who are starting out in their careers and, you know, combat this type of behaviour?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really optimistic about the resources that we've created at the Embrace Collective, one of them being the Embrace Kids film. When you set out to make a film, you want to do many things. You want to tell a really strong story, you want to take people on the journey. But I have watched thousands of young kids watch this film and watch storytelling from their peers on the screen, and it's moved them in a way that I'm pretty certain I haven't seen in any other setting. Storytelling, and I'm a little biased, I'm a film director, but storytelling is so powerful. So our mission this year is to reach the 1 million children, to get everyone to watch the Embrace Kids film, because what underpins that is kindness to one another, self-compassion for yourself. And I think we didn't want to solve all the problems with this film, but we did want to open up a conversation. And that's what's happening in families around Australia, as people are talking about the big subjects that often we're really frightened to talk about. But I think that's the starting point, is having more conversations. And, you know, I'm terrified of these stories, which I read myself, but we've got to keep pushing back against it, and we've got to be kinder to one another, hence why the obesity epidemic, the talk about fat, the talk about dieting, the talk about the shame and the stigma and all of that is not the environment to raise healthy, happy kids who want to be kind to others. Hurt people hurt people. Let's get our kids to feel good about who they are.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Our next question is from April Helene Horton, who is a body positivity spokeswoman / influencer / the Bodzilla.
I am, in fact, all of those things. I don't have a notepad because I'm not a journalist, so I'll read from my notes. As you've rightly said, we can all experience poor body image and the negative impact on our mental health. And as Kat alluded to, and as you covered, those of us who live in marginalised bodies also experience systemic bias in multiple other ways, including our physical health care, the media, and in workplace settings. The act of embracing may not be sufficient at an individual level to overthrow entrenched body beliefs at every setting, which is why you asked all of these different groups of people to act. But how soon do you think the Embrace Collective, an organisation which does have an advisory network, but is led by people who lack lived experience in that space, tangibly impact the experience of being someone whose vehicle to their dreams is the barrier to them?
Yeah, I mean, it's a confronting question, April, I have to say. But do you know what? Here's the thing. I'm so happy to lean into the vulnerability of listening and learning and growing together. We can't be afraid to stand up and use our voice because we have to do it perfectly. So let's take this road together. Let's be challenged in these moments and beyond and work together to address some of those issues.
Sure. So do you think that you can, how soon you think that could happen?
Well, April, I think it's actually already happening. So the Embrace Collective, happened and we came together this year and we have spoken to and worked with many leaders of multicultural and minority groups. And we have been set and focused on preparing the resources, which we've done, and we've got more to do, clearly.
Sure, thank you.
Thanks.
Nearly at the end, Erin Cross from Her Canberra.
Thank you so much. So you've spoken a lot about the work we can do as individuals.
I can't hear you. Sorry, can you? Thanks.
Sorry, is that better? You've spoken a lot about the work we can do as individuals to help each other, and you touched on this in your documentary, there's always been beauty standards. So what can we do to dismantle this part of society?
Yeah, I think in terms of beauty standards, we can choose to buy into or not buy into them. And I think when we take ourselves off that treadmill of thinking the most important thing is how you look, it certainly empowers us to think more about the things that we do and how we contribute and how we use our bodies. I think also in the film, we do a really good job in the Embrace Kids film of identifying, and we certainly speak to lots of kids, about the least important thing about you is how you look. It's the least interesting thing about you. Tell me about who you are and what you do. And I think we need more of a narrative around that. One for parents is when your daughter says, do I look pretty in this dress? A really quick spin on that is, I just want to know, what are you going to do in the dress? These things don't have to be hard. We can all think about how we can improve to do a better job of our language and how we treat one another. Thanks.
Thank you.
And our final question is from Sophie
A
Gray,
young person.
who is a student at Canberra Grammar School.
Wonderful. Welcome. Thanks.
Thank you. Hi, I'm a Year 11 student at Canberra Grammar School. I've really enjoyed being here for your address. So my question, as someone who has struggled with accepting my body and understanding my worth, how do you suggest that I embrace my role as a senior student to mentor younger students?
That's a great question, and there's so much that you can do. And you're standing right in front of the Embrace Collective team who are probably thinking, let's get those leaders in the room together. And that's what we do through an event called Activate. It's about getting the leaders who are passionate about this particular subject and asking them what you think you can do. We have a suite of resources from films to books to songs, things for your teacher, things to give to your parents, your grandparents. It's really important that we have something for everybody. In your school though, I would say go back to your principal, make sure that you go to the embracehub.com. It's a suite of free resources for parents, teachers, students, and make sure that you get that spread across the school and become an Embrace school.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Taryn, you survived it. Thank you so much. The headlines will be all good. On behalf of the Press Club, I'd like to present you with a year gold membership, and you can come back and eat a lovely meal and relax. We would all like to thank you for an excellent address today.